Iranian state media says a suspected Israeli strike has destroyed an Iranian embassy building in the Syrian capital Damascus, with the senior commander in the powerful Iranian Revolutionary Guard among those killed. Israel hasn't commented on the incident. These are the latest pictures we have of the scene. Iranian state television is reporting the senior commander is Reza Zahedi, who led the Palestinian division of the Revolutionary Guard Quds force. The UK-based war monitor, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, says at least 8 people have died, but as yet there's no official confirmation of the figures. Iran's ambassador and his family are reportedly unharmed. Well, let's get the latest from our correspondent in Jerusalem. That's Hugo Bachega. Hugo, what more are you hearing about this incident?
Yeah, Anita, so this is a very significant escalation. So again, as you said, Iranian and Syrian state media saying that an Israeli airstrike targeted the Iranian consulate in the Syrian capital, Damascus. And now reports suggest that the senior commander of the powerful Iranian Revolutionary Guards, Mohammad Reza Zahedi, was killed. So very significant, a high-profile member of Iran's Revolutionary Guards reportedly killed. So we're hearing now these accusations. We haven't had any kind of reaction from Israeli authorities. We know that over the last few years, Israel has carried out attacks targeting positions and also members of Iran's Revolutionary Guards. But it's very rare for the Israeli authorities to acknowledge involvement in those assassinations. So again, very significant development. We've seen that these targeted assassinations have been happening frequently since the beginning of the war between Israel and Hamas. Hamas obviously is a group that is supported by Iran. It is part of Iran's so-called axis of resistance, and we are having a reaction from Iran already. The Iranian authorities are saying that they're going to give a decisive response. So again, a very significant development. It seems to be a very significant escalation as well with this attack.
Hugo, thank you very much for that. Hugo Bachega there. Let's talk now to Faraz Maqsad, who is a senior fellow at the Middle East Institute, about this story. And Faraz, Hugo describing this as an escalation. Do you see this particular strike as an escalation of what's been happening?
Well, there's no doubt about that, Anita. I think some might want to sort of write this off as part of sort of the ongoing operations that Israel has been conducting against both Iran and some of the Iranian proxies operating out of Syria, namely Hezbollah. There has been very senior Iranian commanders killed in the past, including one major strike in December. However, this is the most senior Iranian Revolutionary Guard commander to be killed to date. And I think very importantly, what differentiates this is that essentially the Iranian consulate in Damascus, which is under international law, Iranian territory, has been flattened. So some major escalation here on behalf of Israel. Of course, the Iranians have a preference to taking the war to Israel via proxies, indirectly using Hamas, Hezbollah, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and others. The Israelis here retaliating in a more direct fashion, willing to risk that escalation.
Yes, and of course we're waiting for absolute confirmation that Mohammad Reza Zahedi is amongst the dead, but that is certainly the report that we are getting. If we look at these images from the scene of the explosion, I'm going to ask our director to pull up those images for us. As far as we know, what we're seeing here is part of the consulate, but the buildings on either side appear relatively undamaged, so it does seem to have been a very precise strike.
Yes, Israeli precision in going after these individuals, whether they be in Syria or even in Lebanon, has been quite remarkable. What has also been remarkable and noteworthy is the fact that the Israelis have quite powerful operational intelligence. They know where these commanders are. They went after several senior Hamas and Hezbollah commanders in Lebanon, targeting them within meetings, target them in their own private quarters. And so that raises quite a bit of questions and concerns in terms of operational security for Iran and for these groups in terms of Israel's ability to get to them.
OK, Faraz, thank you very much for your thoughts on this developing story. Faraz Maqsad from the Middle East Institute. And let's get more now from our international editor, Jeremy Bowen, who is in northern Israel. Jeremy, hello to you. And I'd like you, for our viewers, to put what has happened in Damascus into the wider context of what's going on in the region, especially since the war between Hamas and Israel.
Well, essentially, there's been an increasingly serious war going on over the Israel-Lebanon border between Israeli forces and Hezbollah, which is the political militia movement, dominant one in Lebanon, which is very close to Iran, also very close to the Syrian regime. Now, if it wasn't for the fact that so much has been happening in Gaza in the war since October the 7th, I think there'd have been a lot more international attention on what's been happening here. And of course, there are connections. That's why it's going on. So what we've been hearing here this evening, there's been quite a lot of air activity going up towards Lebanon. The border isn't too far from here. And I think what's been going on, as you've been hearing, this is an escalation by Israel. I think they're testing the resolve of both Iran and its clients, its allies, Hezbollah, particularly in Iran, to see how they will respond. Because while they have been engaged, Hezbollah particularly, in a tit-for-tat series of increasingly fierce exchanges with Israel, they've always kept it within what in this part of the world is sometimes referred to as the rules of the game. Hezbollah going after military targets, but Israel seems to be pushing it to move to the next level quite repeatedly. And this is a big upward step. So now the big question is, given that the Iranians particularly are keen to restore the deterrence they feel they've been building up against their enemies. In other words, their enemies feeling that they can't hit Iran, its people, or their targets. Well, the Israelis have said, oh yes, we can, we're going to do this. So now the question is, does Iran respond? How does it respond? It may not be the way that you'd expect. It may not be, I wouldn't expect them to start sending missiles into Israel. Far from it. It might be a cyber attack. I mean, this is all speculation on my part, but the point is that this really increasingly dangerous war between Iran and its allies and proxies and the Israelis has tonight taken quite a big step up.
And what impact, Jeremy, do you think that is going to have on the ground with regards to the situation specifically in Gaza?
Well, I think that Gaza now has its own dynamic there that's going on. I don't think that, you can actually, there have been responses elsewhere in the region because of what's been happening in Gaza. I don't think it necessarily works the other way around. The point is, when all this started 6 months ago now, October the 7th, there were fears that the war would spread. Well, the war has spread, and that has been clear at the very least since the end of last year. And this is another example of the way that a part of the world that is fragile and incendiary that has now taken another step up. I've been doing some reporting around here today, up near the border with Lebanon in the town of Kiryat Shimona, the Israeli town, talking to the mayor, and the mayor says Israel should invade Lebanon because it should invade the south, should take on Hezbollah and destroy it, because in this area, thousands of Israelis have not been home since October. They've all been evacuated. The towns are empty. So, this is something which is a continuing crisis, which has every chance of getting worse.
Jeremy, thank you very much. Jeremy Bowen there for us, our Middle East editor.